Hello, my name is Marvin Makle, and this is my presentation explaining the ins and outs of the U.S. national debt. What is the national debt and its causes? Every year, the government spends a certain amount of money and generates a certain amount of money in revenue from taxes. If the government spends more than it earns, then it is said to have a budget deficit for that year. And if the government generates more revenue than it spends, then it is said to have a budget surplus. The national debt is the sum of past deficits minus any surpluses. The major causes of the national debt are wars and recessions. In wars, the government spends a lot of money on weaponry and troops, in turn, causing an increase in spending, creating a larger budget deficit. In recessions and depressions, the government must spend more on transfer programs since more people qualify for them. And the government tends to attempt to stimulate the economy by spending more to create jobs, also causing an increase in spending. As we see from this graph here of the US national debt since the year 1900, wars and recessions are the usual causes of national debt spikes of the last 120 years. What is the current value of the US national debt? The current value of the debt is around $30 trillion. In the fiscal year 2022, the government has collected $5.3 trillion in payroll and income taxes and has spent $5.35 trillion, which means another year of a budget deficit for the government. As shown by the graph of US debt since 1980, the US debt has increased by 30 folds over the last 42 years. The federal government's role in debt. The federal government is responsible for the drastic increase in the national debt. Transfer payments, such as Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, have greatly increased the debt every year as more and more people get on these programs, increasing their costs. The government also has to pay interest for the debt, causing it to have to spend even more money, in turn, increasing the debt even further. Another role the government plays in the national debt is with its fiscal policy, attempting to stimulate the economy when it is in a recession. As shown by the graph from debt.org, during the last three presidencies, we have seen a drastic increase in the debt. This is due to the housing bubble burst in 2007, causing a recession, and the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, also causing a recession. In both of these cases, Congress and the presidents at the time passed major stimulus bills, which have caused large increases to government spending in an attempt to jumpstart the economy and provide assistance for those without jobs, which has caused the national debt to skyrocket. Who does the US owe? Most of the debt in the US national debt is owned by the public in the forms of treasury bills, treasury notes, treasury inflation protected securities, US savings bonds, and state and local government series securities. As shown by the pie chart, 78.4% of the US national debt is owned by the public, while the other 21.6% is owned by foreign governments and foreign investors. What is the impact of the debt on the US economy? The US's ever increasing national debt hinders the US economy. It causes less money to be able to be spent on roads, education, and healthcare. Having a debt, just like with a loan, payments must be made on that debt. Every year, the government must pay interest on the debt, which causes more spending and in turn a bigger deficit causing more interest that needs to be paid. As seen below, in the left we have the current interest that the government pays, and on the right we have what will be the interest that is projected the government to pay 10 years from now in 2033. It is a debt cycle that is spiraling out of control and increasing more and more every year. As with many other issues that will have a profound effect on the future of the world, like climate change, the ever increasing national debt will have an effect on the future of the US economy, and some can only wonder how long can it sustain at this borrowing pace before collapsing. Is the debt too high, and how can we lower it? On January 8th, 1835, with Andrew Jackson as president, the US debt was at $0. Since then, because of wars, a depression, and recessions, the US debt has risen to over $30 trillion. Lowering the US debt will have to come from major changes on how the government spends its money and, of course, how much money it spends. This is nearly 2 centuries worth of budget deficits that will have to be overcome if the debt will be lowered to a sustainable level. It will take a sustained pattern of budget surpluses for years and probably even decades in order for the national debt to fall to respectable levels. Major reforms will need to be made to the government's transfer payment programs and its tax collection, as currently the programs are too expensive and the government does not generate enough revenue from tax to fund these programs. The US debt is unlikely to ever get near the $0 mark ever again. But that does not mean the government should not try to lower it as much as possible. My name is Marvin Makle, and this has been a presentation on the US debt.